Going on, everybody? My name is Michael Levan. Thank you so much for joining me and my puppy that you just saw jump on the couch there. So, what I want to talk about today is quality, specifically around writing code, building code, shipping code, automation. It all kind of like falls into that, the shipping code aspect. That's like the automation piece, whether it's infrastructure code, whether it's production level code, whether it's software related code, like you're building an application or something like that. Like it all falls under the same category of ultimately like what does quality mean? So before we jump into, code quality or shipping code or whatever the case, so before we jump into like shipping code quality, writing code quality, all of these things, think about quality for a second and just like break it down to everyday life. So for example, let's say you own a home and you are, mowing the grass and you're, you know, about I don't know, halfway in, and you're like, I'm just gonna leave it as is. I got half of it done. Half of the grass is mowed. It looks all right, and you kind of walk away from it. Think about another scenario. You're about to buy a new TV, and you do a little bit of research, and you're like, this one's all right. I'll just order it, and that's that. So these two scenarios have something like very, very common in common, and that is that both scenarios, like, you didn't really do it from a quality perspective. You didn't do your due diligence, and you could get that TV and it could be utter garbage. I mean, it could have not that 401k you wanted, or not meant 4k, not the 401k, sorry, money on the brain. Maybe it doesn't have like the network capability. It's on a smart TV. Let's think about the lawn thing, for example. You mowed half of the grass, and like half of it looks okay, but the other half is a foot tall, and you're like, oh well, whatever. It's everyday scenarios, like everyday situations that you're put in, whether you can make assumptions and just do okay, or you can bring quality to anything that you're doing. And it's very much the same thing with shipping code. I mean, writing code, shipping code, all of it. You can either write code and just be like, oh, tested this function locally, looks good, seems okay, not getting any, bugs in VS Code, but you're not really doing any integration tests. You're not doing true unit tests. You're not doing any linting to make sure that the code is up to the quality that's expected. Shipping code is the same way. You could, say have some pipeline, and maybe that pipeline fails, and you're like, oh, there it's this value here. Let me just hard code it in and let it go on its way. But when you hard code it in, you don't maybe parameterize it, or you don't put a variable in for it. It's not reusable at that point. So there's something hard coded, which means like, is it really coming in from a quality perspective? So essentially, what does code quality mean? Well, I don't think that there's like one meaning to it. There's no way to say like, hey, there's this checklist, this, blah, 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 for all of these different code qualities. Now, there are like, basics, like unit tests and integration tests, and making sure that you're looking at edge cases from a deployment perspective, making sure that you understand what the tasks and the steps that you're using, making sure, if you're using a Microsoft hosted agent or something like that, making sure that you know which agent is it a Windows agent, Linux agent, etc. So there's like those common scenarios, but then there's the not so common scenarios based on your environment. So with that, like, what is code quality? What what does that actually mean for everybody? What is shipping code? What is writing code? What is this whole quality thing? Well, it comes down to three key concepts. One, ensuring that everything is properly tested. If you're writing code, make sure that you have unit tests in there. Make sure that you have integration tests and mock tests. Because here's the thing: you could test something locally. Like this even goes for automation code, scripting code, whatever you want to call it. You could test something locally and it works, right? It's ready to go. It can be committed up to GitHub or whatever source control you're using, and that's really it. Now the problem with that is once it hits source control or GitHub or anything, it's out of your hands at that point. So whoever else is able to use it, whoever else is able to bring it down, manipulate it, anything, at that exact point, even if it's a variable name change, like it could be something so simple, at that point, the test that you did locally, like it doesn't do anything for you anymore. It doesn't matter anymore because somebody else has already manipulated it. Now, from a deployment perspective, the biggest thing there, this is number two, the biggest thing from a deployment perspective is make sure that you have those stages set up. Make sure that you have a dev stage. Make sure that you have a UAT or a QA stage. Make sure that you're putting those tests in prior to even doing anything to production, because that production stage, really what should happen is you should have that dev stage, and that dev stage should be, okay, I'm getting out all the bugs, I'm putting in all the fixes, everything like that. Then you get to the UAT stage, and the UAT stage should be, okay, all the bugs are gone. Like there's no issues that are happening. If there are any failures or any issues, you go back to the dev stage and you fix them. Then you move them into UAT. And really, what should happen at that point is UAT should then, not, I don't want to say migrated, but UAT should be like that golden goose for production. Like that, you should expect that what's in UAT is going to be in production. Dev is really your ultimate testing environment. And number three is always going to be communication, 100%. You could write the best code, you could write the best tests, you could write the best integrations, you could write or do the best pipeline. But the thing is that if nobody else understands what you're doing, or they don't know what you're doing, or any of those scenarios, if it's not communicated to the rest of the team, to the rest of whoever you're working with, that just brings down the quality. So that's going to be number three. And the reason why it's not number one is because I feel like you need to go through it a few times. You need to go through, writing the code and seeing if you're communicating properly, drawing up and writing the pipelines, doing the pipelines, and making sure that you're communicating properly. So I think that you need like something to test that communication against. So that's why I would put it in number three. Now, again, these are scenarios that are going to work in any single environment to get you up to speed with that portion of, okay, I want to start implementing quality code. And how do I do that?